Hey everyone, and welcome to Already Cancelled. I'm Peter, that is Connor, and we are going to talk about Star Trek The Next Generation, Season 3, Episode 13. It's called Deja Q. So, full spoilers for the episode. As always, this episode, the premise is very simple. Q shows up and claims that he's human, that he's been kicked out of the Continuum, and he doesn't know what to do. He's scared, he's confused, he's feeling feelings that he's never felt before, like hunger and sleep, and I mean, sleep's not a feeling, but you know what I mean.
Tiredness.
Yes. He's very, very disturbed by the whole affair. Well, there's a crisis going on. The Enterprise is at a planet where the moon is mysteriously starting to fall out of orbit, and if it does, it's going to cause an extinction level event, or something close to it anyway. So naturally, they're trying to, interfere with that, see if they can use the tractor beam to try and pull the moon back into orbit, but obviously it's a moon. It's not really something that typically people move. So Geordi's really having to work overtime to try and figure out the logistics and the science of it. Is it possible? Is it possible to sort of drag the moon back into orbit? And when Q shows up, they assume that Q is responsible for this because it's such a weird anomaly that's happening.
It's a pretty reasonable assumption, I think.
But Q is adamant that he's got no powers. He has no idea what they're talking about. He just shows up here because he picked this. In fact, we got one of the iconic gifs of Picard face palming. Yes. Not the actual face palming itself, but the way he looks up from the face palm, that gif, that's from this episode, because Q says that he picked human form because he didn't have to pick human. He could have picked anything that was mortal. The punishment was you have to be a mortal life form, and in the split second he had to think about it, he picked this and was sent here because Picard's the closest thing that he's got to a friend, which is what causes Picard's look of just horror,
distress
in his face. So that's the gist of the episode. How did you feel about Deja Q?
It's pretty great, isn't it?
It's pretty fun. Do you know what I love about it is that I think the crisis that's going on in the background is actually pretty enjoyable for what it is, but it is just a crisis in the background. It also doesn't feel shortchanged by only being in the background either. It's the perfect amount of interest for the background crisis.
Yeah, I agree with that. And unlike a lot of these sorts of episodes where the crisis just is solved in the wave of a hand, and that's really frustrating.
And in a way, it kind of is.
No, that's as I say. This time, the wave of the hand is kind of really satisfying.
It's meaningful because like the hand that it's been waved to wave the hand is actually quite important and means that there's a character arc. Q gets a character arc in this episode, where he shows up, he claims to be human, and no one's really having it. I laughed out loud when Worf, Picard's not really believing him. He's like, okay, you want to be treated like a human? Fine. Lieutenant Worf, take him to the brig. And Worf just like he pulls his I would say jumper, but no one will get that. His sweater, his uniform top half down, and says, "Delighted, Captain." Very, very, very. He's ecstatic. I've never seen Worf look so happy about something in all my life. is how he looks when he's taking Q to the brig.
All of this here, the follow-up of Q being like, damn it, I should have been a Klingon. I'm a Klingon at heart.
Yeah, that was entertaining. I actually laughed when they got to the brig because I'm like, yeah, this was the one that the dude with the hair, the nice fancy hair was in a few episodes ago, and I thought, man, they built this set and all of a sudden we're seeing it multiple times. Like, we'd never seen it before that episode, and all of a sudden... And in the space of about 3 episodes or whatever it's been, we've seen it again. So they're happy with
the most
set
of it, right?
Yeah. Well, I've got a feeling that it'll at least be sticking around for the rest of the season, if not just indefinitely. So that happens. Q, Picard goes to see Q because Picard's like, okay, look, can we just drop the charade? Can you just please put them back in its place? Yada yada yada. And he's like, no, it's not me, I swear. Also, something really terrifying happened. I lost consciousness. I felt like the life was draining from me. And Picard's like, you fell asleep. How do you live with this from day to day? You get used to it. Just
this is some top quality comedy here.
It was good stuff. But not even at the best comedy beats yet necessarily. But all of this is gold. But the big other plot thing that comes into it though is that even though it's almost impossible and they fail once or twice trying to do this thing with the moon, ultimately Geordi actually thinks he's got it sussed, or at least it's maybe a bit of a long shot, but they might be able to do it. But when they try to do it, these light orbs, this other species shows up, and they're essentially there to attack Q. This is revenge for whatever Q did to these people. The Calamarians they're called, and basically, like, at first it's not clear that that's what's going on, but then ultimately they kind of get to it. It's like, oh no, every time they drop their shields, because they can't use the tractor beam which they're using for the moon unless the shields are dropped, and every time they drop the shields, these Calamarians enter the ship and go after Q. And it's like, wait, you knew people were going to try and come and get you because of everything you've done to everyone, and they're like, hey, what did you do? It's like, oh, nothing too cruel or inhumane, or and everyone's just like, you tortured them, you terrorized them, you did all these things. Like, no, it was they've got no sense of humor. That's all it is. And we've seen Q be with, how Q is with these characters, so we can only guess in our heads as to what shenanigans they get up to.
Shenanigans is very much the right word, though.
Yeah, but you buy that there's other civilizations out there that want to get their hands on Q. So you totally, you get it. But throughout all of this going on, we have him and Data kind of oddly bonding, I guess, or bonding's maybe not the right word. Data, because he doesn't have the feelings of the humans, despite the fact that he wants to be human and he has the curiosity of the humans, as he mentions in this episode, so he doesn't feel the same resentment of Q, I guess, as everyone else does. So he's willing to actually talk to him and almost give him some advice. And he points out the irony that he wants nothing more to be human, but for Q, this is a punishment to become human.
There's absolutely. But I think it's not just this lack of understanding, lack of resentment that you say. I think there is part of it just the idea that he does feel some sort of kindred spirit with him, in the sense that he's trying to become human. He doesn't really understand himself, but he's trying, and Q, for all the things that are on him, needs that guidance here and is trying to some extent.
Yeah, it kind of summed up for me, because when they're debating what to do with them, and Picard's like, let's just get rid of him, he's not worth the effort. Data kind of sticks, because Q's trying to argue he should be part of the crew, that he can be useful, he's got a lot of information, he may not have his powers anymore, but he's got a lot of knowledge of the universe and science. And Data says, he has been instrumental in thinking up a strategy with, in engineering. And Troy says, oh, looks like you've got an advocate, and Data just looks almost just confuddled by what she says. Says, no, I'm merely stating the fact, Doctor. Like, he's not sticking up for him. It's not the way Data is coming across. I kind of enjoyed that element to it. Also, he gets hungry.
A great payoff, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's got some great payoff. But he gets hungry at one point. He's confused by the feeling in his stomach as Crusher's torturing him with the medical device, trying to heal his back. And because this is actually the same scene where he actually thinks of a solution to help the moon problem. He goes through this list of things, and Geordi's like, we can't do any of those things. Those are all impossible feats of like science that we just don't have yet. He's like, oh well, never mind then. Like, so you just do this. We can't do that. That's like defying the laws of physics. We can't just do that.
It's like, you can't? Huh.
Yeah, oh, so far behind. But he gets hungry. There's a little joke here where Data's like, well, first of all, we find out Data does take some fluids to help with his his fluids, basically. They help.
It's like topping up the oil in a car, I guess.
Yeah, that's what it sounded like. But he says, oh, when Troy's upset, she'll have something chocolatey. And, it brings up a chocolate sundae. So
5 chocolate sundaes.
What? No. Data mentions the chocolate sundae, and then Q says, I'll have 10. He asks for 10 chocolate sundaes.
10, I thought it was 5.
And he's like, I've never seen anyone eat 10 chocolate sundaes before. And the payoff to this, of course, is at the end after the guiding section, is that the sundaes arrive, and he's like, I'm not hungry, because he's just been told by Guinan that he's going to have to survive on the acts of kindness from others, because he doesn't know how to be human. I loved it. Unlike everyone else, she's ready to believe that he's human, and she tests it very easily by just stabbing him in the hand. Seems pretty human to me. She thinks it's hilarious. She's like, oh, this is great. I'm going to enjoy watching this.
I am particularly enjoying their rivalry, because they've got this history that, like, even though we've got history between Q and Picard and the rest of the crew, with Guinan, there's so much more there that we're just still it's slowly unraveling every time.
We're just scratching the surface.
Yeah,
of that stuff. But I mean, if we're not made it clear, Q is delightful throughout this episode. He's one of the. It's funny because you go back to the pilot of the show, and he was the villain in the pilot episode, and the pilot wasn't a great episode, but every time Q's came back, he's been better than the last time. Now, admittedly, I do think his last appearance was a better episode because it also introduced the Borg. So everything else it did was also was better. But I think for Q himself, in terms of a presence, this is his, a winner.
Yeah, I agree with that. This is like a really good, fun episode, but it's never going to be as great an episode as like introducing the Borg by its very nature.
Yeah,
but it's not trying to be. But as actually giving Q some character and some depth beyond just the maniacal shenanigan man that he was.
Yeah, because
it's great.
Yeah, because basically Picard orders him to engineer, and he's offended that Geordi would dare give him an order. He's like, that'd be a waste of my talents, making me press some buttons and read out some, readings. And he's like, do it now and get the hell out of my deck. And he's like, oh, who does he think he is? Your superior officer.
Because he is.
No, all that stuff is really good. Of course, they try it again because they've not quite realised that every time they drop the shields that these things are going to attack yet. But this is the time where it raises Q in the air and Data actually saves him and almost dies in the process. And this is kind of the dramatic turn of the episode where Q has to accept that Data essentially... I mean, obviously Data does survive and he ends up getting up and he's okay. After some, I don't know what to call it, surgery or car maintenance, but he does get up eventually, and the great effect of having the flap of head back, we see some of the circuits. That's good, simple effect.
It's always fun.
It's just a simple little makeup effect, but it's just fun. But he has to. I love the scene that he has with Picard, Q that is, where Q says, "Look, Data basically just sacrificed himself to save me, and when I ask myself the question, would I do the same for him? I'm forced to answer no." Because that's the honest answer, and I feel ashamed. And it's like, huh. And I think the build up to kind of like how this all gets resolved, where knowing that every time they drop the shields, the Calamarians attack, and that therefore they can't save these people on the planet. Q actually performing this selfless act of taking a shuttle and trying to run away so that they don't have to protect him anymore, so that they can save the planet, is actually a wonderful story beat that has a lot of weight to it, despite the fact that this is a very, comical episode up until that point. Up until that point, everything was like, oh, laughs here, jokes there, and you've got this subplot in the background of the planet, and yeah, okay, it's a fine little story, but it's not like tugging at your heartstrings yet, because you assume they're going to win by the end of the episode. Like, it's a Star Trek episode, you're not worried about it.
Yeah, they might lose here or there, but they're not going to lose at an extinction level planet.
No, they're going to have billions of people. I say people, but whatever the species was, I don't recall. But like, him doing this it was a really kind of touching moment, and then the other Q shows up, right, and he sort of pops in. And he's kind of likable in a mischievous way as well, the way he talks to him. And basically, this is the Q that got him kicked out of the Continuum, and says that you just performed a selfless act, and because of that, if the Continuum catches wind of this, and then you die, my entire reason for wanting you kicked out is in question, and I might be in trouble. So, and Q to his true to his character, doesn't like sort of accept it gracefully. He just goes, "Yeah, that was a bit selfless, wasn't it? I was pretty selfless there."
I love this, just like the hint. Like the tiniest insinuation that he did this not to be selfless, but because maybe this will get him back in. And I think the rest of the stuff goes on to show that no, it's okay. It was still enough because of what he does, but there's just enough there to plant that seed of doubt.
Yeah, no, I love that there's no answer to it. It's like we can choose to believe that he did this as a selfless act, and he's just being true to his character the way he reacts when this happens. Or you could take it as, no, he kind of had a conniving plan in the back of his mind of how to maybe get his powers back. And, I think the story's definitely more touching if you believe it, if you believe that he did this for the right reasons. And
I think, though, because of the ending, I think it works either way.
Yeah, because... So obviously after this happens, he comes back, he shows up with the mariachi band and everyone's pissed at him, and he's throwing imaginary women at people and cigars appear in everyone's mouths, and Picard yells at him and tells him to calm down, and of course he does. He puts on the Enterprise uniform and he's like, Starfleet uniform I should say, and he says, "Okay, I've just got one last debt to pay, so I want to thank you all for keeping me safe." And he goes over to Data, because one of the things that Data said when Data was explaining how he wanted to be human and he wanted to, he wanted to cry, he wanted to laugh specifically, that he's never able to do that. And we've seen him try before, like try to understand humor. We've seen this as
a whole episode with him and the comedy club stuff.
This has been a continuing thread throughout his character in the show, and he just goes up to him and sort of, I need to repay a debt, and I can't remember if he literally snaps his fingers, but he does something to sort of insinuate that he's done something. He disappears, and Data just bursts out laughing, and everyone in the bridge is disturbed. They're all watching like,
it's quite a maniacal laugh.
Yeah. If you'd never laughed before, though, and all of a sudden you felt the first funny thing you'd ever sensed in your life, you might have a maniacal laugh too.
You might indeed, yeah.
But it's a delightful moment, and then of course he scans the planet or the moon or whatever, and Data's like, "Oh no, the moon's returned to its proper orbit. Like, it's fine, everything's fixed." And at the end of the episode, as the camera just sort of tracks in Picard, and he says, maybe Q did show he had some humanity in him after all, and it's or whatever the line was to that effect.
Yeah.
And as an episode goes, I think this was kind of, it achieved exactly what it wanted to do, both as being an entertaining episode and making Q a little bit deeper. So the next time he shows up, he's not just that trickster from episode 1 who's there to play pranks and be mildly entertaining. He's actually got a bit more weight behind him.
Nugget of a heart in there.
Yeah. It makes him a little bit more sympathetic, despite how mischievous he is. I think the comparisons to Mixie you just keep getting
more and more. Yeah.
They're just getting stronger and stronger. Bizarrely, I do wonder if Roddenberry was a Superman fan. Yeah,
I mean it's very possible, and I think it's this ending here, which is why the stuff as to whether or not he was actually being selfless or if he had a bit of a plan still work either way, because even if it was a bit of a plan, he gave Data something that was a genuine gift, and he did, save the planet, regardless of whether or not it was a plan or not.
Yeah, and he was it was the first thing he was asked to do. Picard yelled at him, just put the moon back where it is, and
as soon as he could, he did.
Yeah, and I believe that he didn't do this. Like, I don't know if there's an implication in the episode that the Calamarains did this to lure someone in, or
I don't think that. I don't know. I don't recall there being one. I think it was just like a natural event, from what I remember.
Honestly, if I was to make a guess, if it's not natural, I'd say it was the other Q, been up to something.
It could have been, but potentially.
I don't know why he did it, if he did, but
yeah, it's given that the other Q was obviously angry at this Q for his meddling, trickstery ways. This seemed like a very harsh way of teaching him a lesson.
Yeah.
A lot to gamble with.
I think ultimately it doesn't really matter that much if it was natural or not, because I think the actual point of the story of Q's side of it works either way, so yeah, so it's fine. I like that small moment though when he's got his powers back, and he sort of essentially grabs the Calamarain in his hand, and he's about to extinguish them, and the other Q pops his head back in, and he's like, "What are you doing?" He's like, "Oh no, just say goodbye," and he just blows them away. He's like, "Off you go, back to where you're from." He's about to be very vengeful for coming to dare to come after him, but he held it in and remained good. Q is a far more interesting character after this episode. Like I say, I think Q, who back last season, was a phenomenal episode. They introduced the Borg. It was scary, it was dark, it was all these things, and obviously Q's backstory with Guinan did kind of play a role in it, and there was those elements there, but it wasn't a funny episode. Q probably had a couple of funny lines, but that's not what that episode was. Yeah. But this was more about Q himself, and on that level, I think it succeeded. This is one of the best episodes of the season, I think. It's up there with whatever one or two favorites we have so far, which I can't remember at the current time of thinking.
Hard to argue with that. This is, like I say, it did everything it set out to. Like I was saying, we'll say, we'll take Q over this in terms of, as an episode, but this isn't trying to do that. It isn't trying to top that or rehash that in any way. It's taking Q in a completely different approach, so that we're not comparing it to that constantly, and it manages to be a great episode on its own.
One of the little things that I think is really well handled in this episode is you actually get to see, with the exception of Wesley, if you count him, you actually get to see every main character on the show interact with Q at least once in this episode to show how they feel about him. You have Geordi getting angry with him when he won't do his orders. You have Riker being offended when he gives him the imaginary woman. I feel that's a point of pride for Riker. How dare you give me imaginary? I can get real women. I'm Riker, damn it. I'm William T. Riker. You know, if I like Q making a crack at his beard. He's like, "Oh, you were more fun before the beard," or something like that. I said at one point. You know, you have Worf obviously interacting with him at the start of the episode. You have the moment where Troy's kind of sitting there, kind of like, you know, tearing into him at the meeting table. You have, like, obviously Picard has several scenes with him. You know, and Guinan of course has a scene with him. Like, every major character on the show gets to spend at least one small scene with him. Crusher comes in to treat his back at one point, and we get to see her opinion of him. Like, everyone gives their opinion of him, and Data is the only one who doesn't completely, you know, vilify him. Yeah. And maybe there's a lesson to be learned in there, and not rating someone off if there's a chance they can learn to be better. So
I think it's interesting that the one without the feelings, right, and without that grudge that they're holding on to, is the one who can look past it. And
it's what makes that moment before he takes the shuttle when he comes to visit Data. He says, "If it's any consolation, you're a better human than I am." You know, and sometimes Data may be a better human than some of the other characters.
That's true.
So it's there's a touching aspect to it, and I like that a lot. And there you go. I have nothing negative to say. It's I mean,
neither. It's up there.
I mean, it feels weird to say it's flawless because that makes it sound like it's one of the best things of all time. But it's flawless in the sense that there's nothing I can complain about. There's nothing to say.
I think it goes back to in terms of what it's trying to do, in its goals and its the direction it's taking. It is the best version of that idea that it could possibly be.
Yeah, I also love Picard in this episode, that every time Q tries to, because after Data's like sacrifice sort of moment, he has that scene with Picard where Picard, you know, gives him some kind of advice. I love that he never actually becomes the even if anything, he even points out, "I'm not your mentor" or whatever. He says something like that. But I love that even every time Q tries to have a heart to heart or try to look to Picard for guidance, Picard doesn't drop his hatred of Q. He's still annoyed. He's still, like, you know, grumbling his way through it because of who Q is, and it's not a fault of Picard. I actually love that he's still like that. He doesn't drop who he is. Where he would do it with most people. With most people, Picard would become the mentor figure, the father figure. He would give the guidance. He would give the lesson. Instead, Q has to figure it on himself, and Picard's just kind of there to begrudgingly kind of like point out when he's it's good. That side of it's really well done. So yeah, there you go. Déjà Q, really solid episode. You know, delight to have.
Lived up to the title.
It did actually. So next episode 14, is called A Matter of Perspective. Here's the description on
Pretty good title, to be fair.
The description on IMDb reads as follows: The widow of respected scientist Dr. Nell Apgar accuses Riker of seducing her
Classic Riker.
And killing her husband. Rather than turn Riker over to unfavorable trial, the Enterprise reconstructs the facts. Alright, so they're proving Riker's innocence. He's been accused of seducing someone and murdering her husband.
It does sound very plausible.
I mean, this sounds like a farcical episode, and I know Q is kind of a farcical character, but this episode was so well handled with how it developed his character. This next one sounds like it's just pure farce, and that may still be entertaining, don't get me wrong. I'm not expecting a good episode necessarily out of this one, though.
I agree. We've had a few episodes of this style where they're clearly not traditional good episodes, but they're well done enough that they're enjoyable. That's the best I think we can hope for here.
Yeah, so that'll be next time. So let's know what you thought of this one in the comments below. You can like and subscribe, all that stuff. Get us on the Twitters at @mail_fuzz for channel updates. If you want to support the show and the channel and everything we do here, head over to patreon.com/mailfuzztv, and you can support us for as little as $1 per month and get some bonuses, including an exclusive already cancelled actually that we started doing just recently on 6 Feet Under, which is for patrons only at $1 and up. It's audio only, but you get access to it for just the $1. We do at least a few of those every month, so go and have a look and see if you're interested. Then there's other stuff at the higher tiers, but go have a look. That is us though, so thank you once again for watching or listening. We always appreciate it. Keep watching TV, guys. Keep watching Star Trek, And remember that when it comes to the ladies, Riker can get them on his own.